coverage is getting better each and every week. I think the players are figuring it out.
I think there's a huge edge in this thing for good putters and good short game wizards.
Dr. Shapinsky. What's it doing again? Yes!
Welcome back to the TGL show. I'm your host, PGA professional Keith Stewart. And of course, the man next to me, the one, the only, the sharpest man in the Sofi Center. That's Joe Idoni. Joe, how are you, my friend?
Good evening, Keith Stewart. Great to see you as always. Fired up for another TGL show. We had a bit of an upset last match that, of course, we've got to talk about. An exciting one to preview this coming week as well. Here on Super Bowl weekend, talking TGL. Wouldn't rather be any other place in the world than right here.
You know what? I couldn't have said it better myself. And you know what? I want to talk about being fired up for a second. Here's the thing. There's been this kind of narrative that has been permeating the social webs, per se. And that people keep talking about that the audience that's watching TGL season 2 seems to be declining. And, our good friend Josh Carpenter is always putting out the audience numbers, whether it's Live, whether it's a PGA Tour, whether it's TGL, he covers it all. The guy's excellent for Sports Business Journal. Give the guy a follow. We love him. But last Monday, 5 p.m. start, really difficult, to kind of find its way. Tiger's there, but Tiger's not playing. Average audience, 483,000 viewers. Yeah. Now, I talked to Josh, and Josh said last year for all of the non-primetime TGL matches in season 1, the average was 393,000. I'm thinking for a second that this big decline in audience is a little bit of fake news. Can you give me a little perspective on this? Because nobody scours that, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, like you do at TourPix.
Yeah, matches 4 through 7, total viewership across the 4 of them, up pretty significantly from season 1, which is a bit of a surprise to me. You had one match kind of get the bump to ESPN2. You had one early start. Of course, 3 of those matches have been Jupe Links without Tiger Woods playing in those matches. Yeah. So I know he's a part of the coverage, which I'm sure is additive, and people want to tune in to hear what Tiger has to say. But he's not playing. So the league is actually building momentum. And I was surprised, Keith, as I get to the SoFi Center, it's an early start for me, kind of driving up there, trying to get in there by 5 p.m., missed a little bit of the warm-ups. I get there, the place is packed at 5 o'clock on a Monday. Really cool to see. The fans are starting to really get around it. I think some of the new additions to the holes, which we'll talk about later, that they've added in season 2, have brought a new element of creativity and definitely drawn some people in. And it's starting to catch on, man. I don't think this league is going anywhere.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And, there's another narrative that I've been trying to draw you into, and you're not biting. And that is the travel narrative. I said, at some point, these guys got to get tired, right? These guys keep going back and forth across the country, Hawaii to Palm Beach Gardens out to the, Palm Desert. I mean, they're going all these different places, and you keep refuting that. You're like, Keith, I don't know. These guys, they could play anywhere, right? You look at it this week, the guys that played last Monday, Goddard 11th, Batia 6th, Homa, he moved way down the board today, 63rd, but he had a bad day. But, he was up there. He was in the top 30, I guess, going into today. I guess Horschel missed the cut. But, I mean, you're talking about 2 of those young guys, Goddard and Batia, that are going back and forth across the country. And, geez, these guys are sitting in the top 11.
Absolutely. The week before that, Justin Rose goes straight from making an albatross in TGL to running down the entire field at Torrey Pines. Of course, Goddard went all the way from TGL to Waialae and won. So it's not, look, TGL is giving these guys a comfy little private jet to fly them into Palm Beach International Airport each and every week. I'm sure it's not ideal, but as Sahith Theegala told me in the post-match press conference, they get a nice stretched out bed on a G7. They fall asleep. They wake up at Palm Beach State College. They roll out of bed, come play 15 holes in the sim, get back over to the West Coast. Of course, there's got to be some element where it's taking some bit of a toll on them, but it isn't showing thus far. And they look sharp because they're continuing to get themselves in a competitive environment against other top professional players. And I think we could have another winner this week in Waste Management Phoenix Open. It is a TGL player. So if it ain't Scotty Scheffler winning the PGA Tour event, it's probably a guy who's part of this league.
You know what? I think there's a lot to be said for that. And you know what? I want to get to the press conference and all of your reactions from Monday's big upset. I won't speak for you. I'll only speak for myself. We were off. We were always We're always riding Atlanta Drive. They were strong, and you know what? They kind of didn't show up. But if you're just tuning into the TGL show for the first time, Joe and I are going to give you some takeaways from last match, match 7. After that, we're going to talk about the new and improved power rankings, right? The old power rankings with 6 teams and 1 match a week, there wasn't enough movement for me. I don't have a lot of patience being from New Jersey. So for me, I needed more action, Joe. And I've asked you for more action. We have surprise power rankings today, which are situational. And they're 4 match 8, which I absolutely love the idea that you came up with. After that, we're going to preview the match, that we are looking forward to on Monday night between the Bay and LAGC. And of course, we're going to close it up with, our picks, what we usually do here. So take me back to Monday night, the upset, whether you want to go to the press room or you just want to go to the atmosphere, all of a sudden Atlanta's out there, win a hole. They're up 2 and here it goes again, right? Jupiter Lynx, tail between their legs. They win 5 holes in a row. And then what happens? Take me through it.
Well, Keith, after a run of very highly predictable outcomes in TGL, we were probably overdue for an upset inside the SoFi Center. And it's a reminder that is quantifiable and as data-driven as the information throughout the course of this show exists. We're still talking 15 holes. We're still talking wildly volatile video game style golf holes, which we love. And anything can truly happen inside that arena. And Jupiter got hot at the right time. You could feel it building. They lost the first 2 holes, and then as it flipped, they started to get momentum. They had continuity. The same 3 guys in the arena for the 3rd match in 3 weeks. They started to build confidence, and confidence is key in a 15-hole match. They got up early, they held on late, and they were able to pull it out. And boy, were they excited after losing 6 out of their last 7 to come into that press conference second and not the first team in, which is usually the losing team. They had some smiles on their faces, which we hadn't seen in a while out of the Jupe Lynx.
Did any of the guys give you anything in the, usually Tiger's so stoic, but then every week that they're out there, they're losing. Did any of the guys from Jupe Lynx, did Kevin Kisner talk at all? I mean, what do you got for the fans?
Yeah, Kiz said if he didn't play well, Tiger was giving him the boot. I asked Tiger about maybe another certain 5-time major winner that's of the Jupiter area joining this team. Of course, he didn't give me much there. It's probably predictable coming out of
Come on.
But it was fun because I think Akshay talked a lot about how the practice and the work that they've put in and the 3 of them together, and they're starting to understand the green and how to read putts and just getting out to that early lead. And what we saw that was different for me out of Jupe Lynx's first couple of matches is they held on to the hammer, which I think was important. So they were up 5-2 after the triples portion, and they still held 2 of the 3 hammers. I think in those first couple of matches, they were very eager to get that thing on the floor and out of Tiger Woods' pocket too early in the match. And we know half the battle is getting the lead, right? The other half is wielding the power down the stretch when you get to singles. And that's what they sort of took from that match, and I think made them better. It put them in a better position to win, and ultimately they came through in the end.
So obviously Rob McNamara is watching the TGL show. He's listening to you and I, because we've been leaning down that road forever, telling these guys that you've got to hold on to the hammers because they provide leverage further down the road. And they started to use them in the correct manner, and you could see it. And for me, the biggest difference there was that Atlanta has always been the best scrambling team, and they were not good around the green, and Jupiter really turned that around for themselves. And I think that was the biggest difference, because ball striking wise, the 2 teams are pretty even, but those scoring moments happen right around that green zone, whether it's a long putt or it's a really good chip or a chip in or something like that. And Jupiter got it done. Now, here's the question, because now the only team that doesn't have a win is coming in this week for match 8, and that's the Bay. Do you think there's anything that the Bay can learn from Jupe Lynx after watching the big upset?
I think I just touched on it. If they can learn anything, it's hold on to the hammer. Patience is a virtue, not only in life, Keith Stewart, but when you're holding the hammer. The last match against Boston, they simply weren't competitive from the jump in that match. But going back to their previous match against Atlanta, they threw 2 hammers within the first 4 holes, right? If you don't succeed and double up those points, then you've got 1 for the next 11 holes. That really puts you in a disadvantaged spot. And we saw Atlanta in that match that was close late. As soon as it gets to singles, Ben Helmrath and the Atlanta Drive and Patrick Cantlay know what they're doing, and they've got those to play. So you have to hold the power late in the match. They've got to be patient with them and play them at the proper time. And I think that's one thing they can take from that Jupiter win last week and hope to apply this week, because they've been rather inept in that department so far this season.
In that answer, you use the word patient or patience 3 times. It's not going to happen for me, Joe, right? I need the new power rankings. I'm not a patient man. Like, hit the video. Let's talk about it. Fans of the show know that week after week, Joe has been giving us a breakdown of his power rankings for the 6 teams. Now, with 1 match a week, and I alluded to this in the opening, there's just not enough movement there for me. I need more entertainment. I need more infotainment from Mr. Idoni, right? The sharpest man in the SoFi Center. So we came up with a task for him. There's a bunch of new holes, and it was kind of inspired, I think, by our interview last week with Augie Pizza. And so this week, Joe's power rankings, and he's going to give them to you in a second. He's going to rank there's 6 new season 2 holes in match 8 across the scorecard, across the 15 holes for Monday night. Joe's going to rank them from 6th the worst to 1st the best. And if you know Joe, you could probably guess what number 1 is. But Joe, take us through the list.
Don't spoil it, Keith. The people are hanging on by a thread. Okay, 5 and 6. I'm going to just kind of group these 2 holes together. They are the 2 repurposed par 5. So they're new holes this season, but in theory, they were holes that were used during season 1. The par 5s, they're rather mundane to me. I don't see a whole lot of differentiating factors for them. So I'm going to put them in the 5 and 6 spot. Number 4, I'm going to go with the most recently revealed hole. Cut the Sails, the new Gilhan's par 4 hole. There are some entertaining aspects to that hole. I think it can be better, which I'm sure we'll touch on, but I've got that at number 4. At number 3, I love Cenote. The first hole that was unveiled this season by Mr. Pizza, who was part of our show last week. If I had one small negative when it comes to Cenote, why it's maybe not inside the top 2 is it's rather luck driven, right? You hit that cape and it's really hard to differentiate a good shot from a bad shot. As long as you hit it there, you're somewhere on the green. There's different spots you can hit, but it's a little too derived around luck for me. Number 2, I love the last hole, the recent one from Gilhan's, the par 3 hole. You've got to hit it through the bridge. You've got to hit it over the bridge. You've got to hit it around the bridge. You've got to find a way on some sort of way on that apocalyptic hole to find the green. And number 1, as should come as no surprise to anyone who's watched this show, Stinger is unequivocally the best hole in the history of TGL. It introduces all the volatility that I need out of a signature hole, where there's high probability of making a bogey. There's high probability of making a birdie. It forces players to do something they are uncomfortable doing in many instances, which I love. So here's my top 6, Keith. Feel free to give me your feedback on where I'm right or wrong regarding this list.
No, you're spot on about everything. I'll get to another question in a second. I'll just say Cenote, I still want to call it C-Note, and you know why. But I don't like the roll off the ramp. You know, there should be, maybe they'll modify it. Maybe we'll get to Augie and maybe they'll modify it a little bit. So you have to hit a certain side of the ramp to hit a certain side of the green. I know that was probably the intent, but there's just a little bit too much luck with the roll off the ramp. The last 2, the reason those are 1 and 2, and I knew they would be down there near the top of your list. And that's because you are forcing the players to shape shots a certain way. And this is where I think that the next level of design is going to happen. And I want to see a par 5 that's like a stinger or like a last hole. And I get that it's easier when it comes to the last hole. It's a par 3. Only one guy, I think it's Akshay, is the only guy that's ever hit the green in regulation. They've been using it for 3 weeks. So,
Mhm.
like it's a good design that these guys are really being challenged by. I want there to be a challenging par 5. A risk reward par 5 is not challenging to these guys. Now, I don't need a clown's mouth or anything, but like, what would you like to see in a par 5 that would really make it feel like stinger to you?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I actually love the idea of quick draw, which will be the first hole that we see in singles, and they often use it as the last hole in the match. It's almost a part of every match, I feel like.
Yeah.
But that landing area needs to be significantly smaller. It's too big. There's
Yeah.
not enough risk there. Everyone in the field can reach it. Everyone goes for it, and then you have like a 6-iron into that par 5. So it needs to be strategic, in my opinion, where you should have to be able to carry it 310 yards to be able to even hit that landing pad, which also brings in lineup construction, right? Which would
Oh,
rule out, for instance, like you
pre-
take LAGC this week, it would rule out someone like Tommy Fleetwood from playing that hole. It would bring an additional element of strategy where you're like, hey, maybe we need Tony Finau to play this hole, right? Because he's the longer player. So it brings in additional strategy in terms of the team manager has to understand that. But I think there just needs to be more risk on a lot of these holes and a big reward payoff if you structure your lineup properly and you are able to pull off that shot.
Joe, fantastic job on the rankings, an even better job on that answer. Let's take him to the preview.
Let's hit it.
That is Tiger at its best.
Now we're going to have some fun because the Signature Series is starting on the PGA Tour there, Joe. We got Pebble Beach this week. You got all the best players in the world out on the left coast, and we're still playing TGL over there in Palm Beach Gardens. And we've got 4 guys in the lineup cards this week that have not played at all in season 2. And we've got 2 guys that have never played in TGL at all. So I'm going to go through the lineup cards. You may need a pen and paper to write some of these names down because a few of them are new. You haven't heard them all season, but here we go. LAGC has the honor. They'll be the first ones to tee off. You're starting with Tony Finau. Now, he was a sub last year, but we're going Tony Finau, Tommy Fleetwood in his first match of the year, and then we're finishing with Sahith Theegala. On the other side, the Bay Golf Club, we're going Luke Clanton, Neil Shipley, and Minwoo Lee. The coordinator over there on the LAGC side, well, Sahith Theegala knows him really well. It's Carl Smith, his caddy. And then on the Base Golf Club side, the coordinator, of course, is Josh Seipel. He'll have his hands full because he's got to put together a strategy for these 2 rookies. You see this. You see these changes, the mad shuffle that's going on. First impressions.
The youth movement over there out of the West Coast when we get Luke Clanton and Neil Shipley, 2 guys who just earned their PGA Tour card this year, are now making their debut inside the SoFi Center here in the Battle of California in LA versus the Bay. The most obvious thing here that jumps off the page to me is a tough spot for the Bay because they've essentially got their backs up against the wall, being 0-2, and they're rolling out a lineup, in my opinion, without their 3 best players, right? They're down Shane Lowry, they're down Wyndham Clark, who was arguably the MVP of last season, and they're down Ludwig Oberg, who's a top 10 player in the world. Tough scheduling spot up against Pebble there. Basically a must-win game for the Bay, and they're rolling out 2 guys who've never been in there before. I'm excited to see Tommy Fleetwood back in action. Number 4 player in the world makes his season 2 debut. He's going to go head to head with Neil Shipley in what feels like a bit of a mismatch there. There's an argument to be said who has the better hair, but you can't argue who's the better player in that matchup spot number 2. And then we get Tony Finau, who's been struggling a little bit. So interesting to see Finau in this matchup. But the lineups came out. I give the early nod to LA, but we'll get more into the stats and try to figure out which is the right side here.
Yeah, our friends at FanDuel have definitely made LA the not significant favorites like we saw last week with Atlanta Drive over Jupiter Links. And of course, you saw how that turned out. But definitely decent favorites right now, LA over the Bay. And, I got to go right to that middle. And I don't know where you're going to – someone's getting Fleetwood at some point. And
Yeah.
Fleetwood is the perfect TGL player. He's hyper accurate all of the time. He can score, and he's a pretty good putter. So, like, Tommy just doesn't miss shots. And of course, you have trained me. I go right to the lineup. I go right looking for who's teeing off on Stinger, and I've got Tommy flight the ball Fleetwood versus Neil Shipley. Tommy can hit the ball any height he wants. He can hit it. He can hit it under a toll gate. I mean, he can hit it any height he wants. He's got every window in the book. And Neil Shipley, he hits his drives big, high, right to left draws.
Yeah.
So he might be the first guy that tries to go around the rock on the cliff, which would be kind of fun. But, neither Clanton nor Shipley are really distinguishing themselves this year. They've got 7 starts between the two of them this year, Joe. And they've got a bunch of miscuts. They've got one withdrawal with Clanton. It's an interesting choice by the Bay. Do you have any background on any of that? Because I mean, you are TGL's ultimate insider. These guys' agents, they did a good job, because right now on the PGA Tour, there's some other young stars that I might want to see.
Well, I'll tell you this. They've been in the SoFi Center for multiple matches this season. I've seen Luke Clanton there. I've seen Neil Shipley there. They've shown him on the screen. I would imagine that they've hit their fair share of shots in there. You mentioned Tommy. We get him back. He played 4 of the 6 matches in season 1, helped them get that number 1 seed. Several clutch moments. He's, of course, near the league lead in driving accuracy and scrambling. Like, the big thing there in that matchup in Fleetwood and Shipley is Tommy gets 2 very short par 3s. One that's going to play as the shortest hole all season at 110 yards. There's not many players sharper on planet Earth with a pitching wedge than Tommy Fleetwood. Finau, of course, is back. He had his signature moment last year, making eagle in a singles hole to defeat Cameron Young, which took that match to overtime that LA ultimately won. I'm interested here, Keith, in Luke Clanton. And I know he struggled a little bit, right? But his first year as a full-time PGA Tour member. But this is a guy, if you take out his last 10 starts, who was a rising star at one point. As an amateur, had 2 second-place finishes on the PGA Tour and a top 5 in the 2024 year without having a PGA Tour card. 3-time All-American at Florida State. Obviously has a great pedigree. And you know what else I like that's kind of a little nuance here?
Tell me.
Clanton played really well in another golf-adjacent, weird format at the Golf Channel games like a month and a half or 2 months ago. And he was pretty awesome in that environment. He was really, I thought, great in the mic'd up segment. He showed the ability to hit multiple creative shots, which I think could certainly help him in this environment. And he's a player who lives down here in this area, who's, I'm sure, has plenty of experience hitting shots inside the SoFi Center. And if he can play well, I think he could be a rising star in the league over the next couple of years to come.
I mean, you are seriously the Adam Schefter of TGL in there. I had no idea those guys were even in there. And I'm there a lot with you. I'm not there as much as you, but I mean, you are the eyes and ears of that institution, my friend. It's unbelievable. Like, the stuff that just comes to you all the time. Your cell phone's always buzzing in there. You're like Schefter. I just love it. I love it. Now with Clanton, with one or two of the, it probably won't be both. Odds are against that, but either Luke or Neil could have a little bit of an Akshay moment. Akshay didn't have a good start to his season out there on the PGA Tour. Last week, he was really good. That bunker shot that he hit on the par 5 was really, really good. Akshay hit some really good shots in competition during match 7. Jupiter Links wins, gets a little boost of confidence. Then look where he is this week at the WMPO. Like, the kid's getting it done. Clanton or Shipley needs a moment like that. And I think that there's an opportunity to do that there. And their teammate is probably one of the top 5 most confident guys on the PGA Tour. So it's going to be very interesting. When these two teams met in the first season, LAGC pulled it out with a 5-3 win, but I'm not sure how much of that matters. And I'm not sure how much of the 0-2 record versus the 1-1 record matters, because these teams are drastically different than the ones they've been rolling out for the last month.
Agree with you there. Bay, completely new roster, unseen. So these guys don't have the scar tissue of going 0-2 and getting kind of, boat raced in their first couple of matches. They're going to be looking forward to it. Of course, that can go both ways, as we've seen. Some players get in there and it's sensory overload and they struggle with the green. They struggle with the bunkers. They struggle with kind of picking out spots on that giant, 6-story screen inside there. But then we see some players catch fire right away, and it carries over to the PGA Tour, like Michael Thorbjornsen, like Chris Gotterup, guys who stepped into the arena right off the bat and played really well, and it helped fuel them off to good starts. So this may be just what those two players need.
I'm thinking the same thing. And you know what else I'm thinking is that I always love to look at the scorecard. And as we transition to the course in the 15 holes for match 8, 6,180 yards, Joe. The longest golf course we've seen yet this season. And there's an edge in distance for the Bay. They are the longer team on average. When you start to look at the full lineup there. Finau, I know he can move it as far as he wants to, but he's definitely not hitting the driver as far as he used to out on tour. And you've got these two young bucks that definitely just lay into it, especially Shipley, right? I mean, Clanton kills it too. I mean, the guy's both smoking. And then you've got Minwoo. So when you start to look at the par 4 average this week is 48 yards longer than the match last week. You have two of the shortest teams last week going head to head, and they really shortened the golf course. This week, we are looking at 15 holes that are the longest stretch that we have seen yet this year. Fairways, almost 70% hit rate for this collection of 15 holes. But here's the catch. Greens in regulation, one of the lowest for any collection of 15 holes, 63%. And this collection of holes, something that caught my eye, these 15 holes have presented 21 different penalties this year already.
Wow. That's amazing. You are as dialed in as anybody when it comes to the course setup on this
I love
stuff
it.
and the total yardage. You asked me who it favors, the longest course. It favors the Bay. I mean, you've got Minwoo Lee, who led TGL in ball speed and carry in season 1. Clanton and Shipley both pound it. There are certain holes. I mean, I look at the advantage, obviously, that Tommy Fleetwood has as a player over someone like Neil Shipley, but you get him on cut the sails, right? And what we saw last week is two guys. It was Akshay and it was Chris Gotterup. Chris Gotterup hit the longest drive in the history of TGL on that hole, because if you can carry it 310, you hit that speed slot that carries it basically down to the greenside bunker. Akshay couldn't quite get it out there, tried to go for it, hit it 305, stuck up against the lip of a bunker. Just like that, Atlanta's up. And it's just because of that little bit of difference in carry distance. So that particular hole is actually going to favor Neil Shipley, right? Because he's the longer player of the two. So there are instances like that are super interesting. Obviously, the Bay is the longer team, but you mentioned the greens and regulation thing, right? Here are some stats that I have from season 1 of TGL versus season 2 of TGL for the Bay, right? Season 1, first in driving accuracy on the year. This season, they're 6th. They're dead last. Season 1, greens in regulation. The Bay was the number 1 team in TGL. Season 2, they're dead last. First in short putt efficiency and second in medium putt efficiency in season 1. They're 4th and 5th in season 2. They were the number 1 team last year in triples. They are the worst team this season in triples. So all of those trends are not in their favor. They have to flip this thing around, because if they go 0-3, they are virtually out of playoff competition and really with their backs up against the wall. An important match for the Bay with their secondary lineup. We'll see if they can kind of get it done.
Joe, I mean, you're such a nice guy. That didn't, you took it. You took the Bay to town right there.
But I tell it like it is, man. They took themselves to town.
Holy moly! What a difference a year makes. I knew it wasn't as sharp, but man, it's pretty bad, isn't it? So here's the thing, right? Once again, we're in this scenario where if you just look at how they've performed, even in only season 2, and you look at the teams on paper, right? LAGC, they're favored, right? They are the better team. They have the 2 better players in Fleetwood and in Sahith, right? They're both proven entities for sure. They have the sub that has more experience in Tony Finau, because he's played in one of these matches before. So, we definitely want to lean that way. But guess what? Hey, Jupiter won last week, and they followed the blueprint almost to a T of what you said they needed to do in the show. So take me through this again. If the Bay is going to win, what do they need to do to accomplish that feat?
Well, the Rooks kind of have to ball out for them. Here's the difference that I'll say is Jupiter rolled out a consistent lineup for the third time in 14 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not the same thing. And experience matters inside the SoFi Center. Now, Justin Rose was a key cog for the LA G Wagon, but the insertion of Tommy Ladd has certainly provided a nice spark. Sahith Theegala 7-4 in singles, an experienced guy, and the most experienced guy in this match in terms of being able to play those season 2 holes. He's the type of player, he told me himself, that he's all in on TGL. He relishes this stuff. He relishes the opportunity to hit creative shots around the green and wow the crowd, and is just so into it and has so much fun in there. He wouldn't dare miss a match. He's right. He's the sixth guy in the Aeon Swing 5 as we head into the final round over there in Phoenix. So if he top 10s, he probably gets into Pebble. There ain't no way he's missing this match. I'll tell you that right now. I've got them as a strong favorite in this match. I think there's a path there with effective hammer usage for the Bay, as with any team, but I lack confidence because they've been inept in that department in season 2. I don't trust the strategy necessarily of their team in lineup construction, and I think the team continuity ultimately that we saw carry Jupiter is just not there for the Bay. I'm leaning LA pretty heavy.
Yeah, I have to pick LA myself. And I know everyone's going to say, oh, Keith and Joe, you're picking the favorites. But I mean, folks, what are we doing? I mean, what are we doing here, right? I mean, if you just look at the lineup construction, you point these things out to me all the time, the nuance of it all. How's Minwoo not hitting the tee shot on Stinger?
Mm-hmm.
Clanton's a better iron player. How come he is not on those short par threes?
Right.
Like I can give you example after example, and that's why I'm leaning towards the LA side. Of course, we will get to when the boards post and all the prop, opportunities come out on Monday night. We will certainly, read the line in the TGL show. We'll put out some fun picks of our own, to kind of continue the theme of what we've been doing all year here, because we're going to take a little break coming up here, Mr. Idoni, right? The week of the Genesis Invitational. We have a quick break, and then we're coming back with the Quad Fest. I mean, we're gonna have 4 matches in 2 days, and we have to do them in a half an hour on this show. You want to talk about drinking from a fire hose? We're going Monday, February 23rd. We have a doubleheader for Atlanta, and listen to this. They got to play Boston at 5 and LA at 9.
Yeah,
and then the next day on the 24th, February 24th. New York's got a doubleheader, and they're going the Bay back to Boston. And then I'm with you all week because it's the Cognizant Classic. That's the week that everybody's over there at PGA National. That is going to be a who's who. Those 2 nights are going to be a who's who of what's going on at TGL. Your phone is going to be blowing up like Schefter at the Super Bowl this weekend.
Yeah, we knew this was coming. Hey, look, we're going to need this little breather week because we've got 4 matches to cover in this show next week. Certainly excited for it. I asked Rory about this a couple of weeks ago, one of the founders of the league and certainly one of the most important pieces. And he said this was a significant effort put in place by those in charge to tighten this season up and really build around the Cognizant and Bay Hill weeks so they can wrap this thing up and get everything in and out before the heart of the PGA Tour season and we start to get up there to TPC Sawgrass. All that to say, I'm super fired up to cover all 4 matches. I'm not quite sure how we're going to squeeze it all in, but we will have plenty of time to put in the necessary research. You can trust that we are the source to go to preview each and every match, which I hope that you've taken notice of this season. Thank you all for watching and supporting the show. Excited for it. We will see you in 2 weeks. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to start by tightening it up right now. I'm going to thank you, of course, for being with me every single week covering the TGL. I got to thank everybody over there at the TGL and the team in the comms department. Chris Reimer and his whole team, they're fantastic. The social team, everybody, PR, everyone's just so good to us to allow us to have fun and to preview all of these matches. Certainly the producers of this show, You know who they are. And of course, our friends over at Golf Space Collective, the one, the only, Mr. DJ Whoosh, my friend Al, your friend Al, who puts out all of the social content for us. Thanks to everybody for making the TGL show what it is. Folks, I'm your host, Keith Stewart. Peace.